That's right, and you know what that means. That means we are on for the second part of New Day Kenya on this 18th day of November 2020. And my panel is fired and ready to have this conversation on the state of the nation so that at the end of the day, we want to make sense of what is going on in our country this morning. Now, I want to start with a very simple question, and I'll start from my far right all the way to my immediate right now. An advice. When you heard the Education CS, Professor George Mwaga, say that schools should be reopened on January 4th of 2021 for everybody, what were your immediate thoughts?
Confusion. Confusion was what I immediately thought, because CS Mwaga has given more press conferences than the CS for health during this COVID-19 pandemic. And every time Mwaga has come out to the public, he has told us something that does not agree with what he said in the previous press. So I think the Ministry of Education has talked more than it has communicated. Because every other time we only see them talking, but there's very little communication that they are doing. I think it is high time that the CS starts taking those matters, education, seriously, sits down with stakeholders, and they must have a tangible, agreeable plan on how to handle education matters. Because when I look at how he's handling most of the things, he's running in what, in my view, what I would call a solo show, where he looks like he is the one who knows everything in the ministry. He's the one who should implement everything in the ministry. He's the one who should communicate everything in the ministry, and he's the one who should make every decision in the ministry. I think the CS needs to take this matter seriously, and he needs to know that the back and forth in the ministry is not helping this country at all. We heard him say in the beginning that they will give children masks. Later they said that it's the responsibility of parents to go and then look for masks. We had them they have given so many reopening dates that you cannot even account for all of them. So to me, every time I actually see the CS Mwaga on the TV screens, I see confusion.
Ben.
I think let's be kind to him, because to start with, this is a virus whose manners are not known very well. France has opened and closed schools. The UK has opened and closed schools. Parts of the world have looked at this pandemic, because sometimes, remember, the containment measures that Kenyans were making noise about have been seen to have borne fruit. The level of contamination or the level of spread of the virus had gone down significantly. And then it was reopened. Tukaambiwa tunaweza kunywa pombe kidogo, and a few other things were relaxed. And what happened? There was a spike. And ordinarily, when the spike rises, when you hear a principal has lost a life, when you hear some kids have lost their lives because of COVID, as a minister, you don't come and say that the position I held yesterday holds today. It has to change. So I think let's be fair to Mwaga. It's not that he's speaking from two sides of the mouth. It's just that even those ministers of education in countries like France, the UK, and other places are dealing with a pandemic that, I mean, can you come and say that Germany is insane because at some point they've had to close their schools? It's just that the virus, the way it behaves, dictates how you behave. And as far as reopening in the month of January is concerned, if you ask me, I still think that date is provisional. Right now, you've had in excess of 17 schools have closed down. There are principals who've lost their lives. There are kids who have lost their lives. And that's a very unfortunate thing. So if Mwaga woke up in December and decided, no, we are not going to open schools in January because we've lost children and we've lost teachers, I wouldn't come and say Mwaga is egocentric and he's mad and he's not doing things the right way. I would say, again, the virus has misbehaved and the trends in Kenya have misbehaved. And for that reason, we have to make a decision that is in favor of keeping, because personally I have children. And I have made up my mind. I don't care what the government says. It's my responsibility as a parent, first and foremost, to protect my children. So I will look at what will be happening at that point in time. And even if they come with a gun to my house and tell me to take my child to school, and I look and see that the conditions are not favorable, my children can learn next year or the year after that. Hakuna mahali wataenda. It took me 11 years to finish my law degree. I always say that, because there were so many things that happened in between. Mandela got his law degree at 48. Marunge Kimani went to school at 84. So we can wait if we have to, but you want to see your child alive and well for them to study, not just in a school. Kama kuna wazazi wameshindwa kulea watoto wao, shule sio mahali ya kutupa watoto. Ni sisi tutakaa na wetu, and you know, You forget the reason in the first place why the schools were closed. They were closed because of COVID. Is the reason gone? No. Is the vaccine found? No. Is there a drug? No. The reason subsists.
Kidi,
Thank you
immediate
so,
thoughts.
Thank you so much. I will preface my comments by saying that education and going to school are not synonymous. And therefore, if you look at the hurry to want to take our children to school, it's as though education only takes place in school. Education can take place at home. And if anything, our children do not just require us to pay fees and provide and do all that. Our children also deserve to be around us, to feel our love, to spend a quality time with us.
Very true.
And the flip side of this worrying situation that COVID has brought is that it has given us an opportunity to be home with our children. Over and above that, there are a few fundamental questions that I would want to ask myself in responding to your question. That when we closed school in March to date, have we made any infrastructural investment that would make schools safer for our children? And I would tell you the answer is no, because even our attempt to invest in school desks is also mired in controversy. The next question is, have we made necessary public health infrastructure investments to ensure that when our children are in school, that they would be safe? And the answer is also no. The third question is that, are there any policy interventions, coherent policy interventions that the Ministry of Education, of course working in conjunction with other partners, including but not limited to parents, and Ministry of Health, have put in place to ensure that our children and teachers are safe, and that older members of society with the children in schools are then able to be safe when children possibly go to school and contract the virus? And the answer is also a resounding no. So I would say that there is no hurry in taking our children to school. And therefore, if at that point in time, the government still realizes that opening up schools would be disastrous, I hope that we shall still be able to have our children at home.
All right.
Above all else, in 2020, the greatest profit we want to get out of 2020 is to remain alive.
No, but if you look at Magoha, the man now, he is a medical doctor.
A urologist, yes.
He also has had a background in leading a medical an educational institution in the
Yes.
University of Nairobi.
Yes.
How would you rate him in the manner in which he has handled this education sector in the
Yes.
midst of a health pandemic? I mean, Magoha, if there's anybody who ought to know better about how viruses behave, it should be himself. So how would you rate him in the manner in which he has juggled this ball between health and education?
The first thing is that all of us are limited by the mere fact that we are human beings. And therefore, the first thing anyone to whom trust of public office has been bestowed on must always ensure that they inculcate engagement of stakeholders. So that I don't think MOH should be a one-man show. There are experts in there, there are policy experts in there, there are parents, there are teachers. But then it appears like these decisions are made unilaterally, because it seems, in my estimation, that someone's, and in this case, Professor seems like he is really in dire need of attention and praise and whatnot. I wish that he was restrained enough to first want to engage, mold consensus, even within the ministry, engage experts, engage stakeholders like the teachers unions, KUPPET, NAT, and even parents, so that one, they come up with decisions that both of them agree. But he seems that he is so desperate to appear to be bulldozing his way and to come, quote unquote, as a man of his own mind. And I think that is ending up as a disaster after disaster after disaster. I mean, a policy disaster. Thank you.
You see, the $1 million challenge you have is that you're imagining Kenya is the kind of country when you hold a multi-sectoral meeting to approach a matter, you find people who mean well. half the time when you invite people to come and have consultations, you're talking to someone who has imported a container of masks because he's in the Ministry of Education. You're talking to someone who has imported some thermometers. They're in that committee. You're talking to someone who used to benefit from books being printed by printers who should not have printed anyway, and so many other sorts of things. Most of the time, what is placed on the table is never what is the real situation. Someone has a secret card below. And I can tell you, I do not even think it was Magoha's idea to have schools reopen when they reopened. They still held the idea of holding them in January. But for sure, there probably had been someone who had kids' masks. And that's why they're insisting that the government will not give, you have to buy. And then they flood the market. There is someone who had thermometers in those committees. There is someone who, and these are the things that affect us as a nation, that the people who hold public offices also trade with government. And these people are making decisions. That's why they will come and say that in as much as people are going to school, for example, you might hear a very ridiculous thing. They'll come and say, you'll see by January, they'll even start saying the standard of the mask, the color of the mask, and so many other things, because they know where their containers are hidden for whatever. And that's why it becomes extremely dangerous to have a conversation with the bulk of the people who are stakeholders, because most of them, unfortunately, whatever they say during boardrooms is contrary to whatever is going on in their private interests. And that is what has been affecting this country. Half the decisions that are made with money in mind, and the people who are coming to tell you, go and say these, are also laughing at you because they have something they are selling. It's a very funny country.
Before you let my brother speak, let me say this. Human engagements are premised on what we call bona fides, the presumption of good faith.
Exactly.
And therefore, we cannot run away from that cardinal presumption and look at everyone as a potential beast. If anything, we have given the government the instruments of violence to be able to flesh out such charlatans in our midst. But then, that is why the Constitution of Kenya, in its infinite wisdom, said that public participation is a national value and a principle of governance, that you cannot make decisions about the people without engaging those people.
Exactly.
So that when all is said and done, when you talk about our bad manners, when you talk about our, our desire to take advantage of situations, we must always, when all is said and done, be able to engage the stakeholders.
And that's why you need BBI, because it has created a bill called the Public Participation Bill.
Yes.
Public Participation Bill to guide how public participation happens.
We'll talk about that later.
Because right now, public participation is an amorphous beast with horns that we don't know how it looks like.
All right, let us finish with this.
So while at it, let me just say this. That while at it, let me borrow the words of JFK, that we shall trust but verify. The government must be able to cultivate trust between itself and other stakeholders, but still be able to verify.
All right.
Yes, thank you.
Advice, when this pandemic hit the country, there was that talk of the battle between lives and the livelihoods. Now this is now escalating between the battle between lives, livelihoods, and education. Where would you put your money on?
I think, first of all, Kazungu, I think my belief in good manners and the concept of turn-taking is working against me entirely on this show. But then, if I can just weigh in what Ben put across in terms of the people who are making decisions about the interests of this country having personal interests. The mere fact that we have challenges does not then block the fact that someone is supposed to be a leader. There is a reason why somebody was vetted and given the position of cabinet secretary for education. They were not put there because it is easy to run. They were put there because it is challenging and they qualified to run the ministry. So we cannot put in and judge them on the basis of the challenges that are supposed to be there. Those challenges are supposed to be there, and that cabinet secretary is supposed to work a way around the challenges. So we cannot forgive him for that just because there are challenges there. And you see, Ben speaks from both ends of his mouth when he tells me that he believes in what the cabinet secretary is saying, but then says he will not release his children to go to school. If he really believes in what the cabinet secretary is saying, then he would be in a position to release his children to go to school when the cabinet secretary says so. So you can see already, even as a person, he does not even believe in what the government in entirety is doing. But then coming to the question of the balance then between the interests of the people within the ministry and how then the ministry should be run. At the end of the day, the cabinet secretary for education has a mandate to deliver to the Kenyan students, the Kenyan teachers, and the overall the general population of this country. And he has to be professional about it. The mere fact, just because the pandemic keeps changing, tell me how that affects the government position to provide masks. The change of the pandemic, the changes in the pandemic are not supposed to affect such a decision. If the government was supposed to give children masks, it should give the children masks. That is not affected by how many people are infected and how many people were not infected. So I think generally the Ministry of Education, in what Kidi says, is trying more to seek attention than to provide solutions for this country.
All right, Ben, you say you have kids that you will not take to school if the situation would not have improved by then. But if you look at how both the Health Ministry and the Education Ministry have handled this thing, as late as Monday, when the CS for Education, George Mwaga, said schools will be reopened on the 4th of January, the Health CS Butai Kagwe came and said that date is not cast in stone. Very many parents, when you speak to them in the streets out here, they say it looks like the government does not have a plan. The government does not look like it understands what it needs to do. So from you as a parent on this panel, and many of us are parents, but what do you think? How are we supposed to read this, what the government is doing? This one ministry says this, the other ministry says this. When the president comes to speak, he speaks of a totally different angle. How are we supposed to look at it as parents, as we prepare ourselves to take our kids back to school?
I think, as I said, it's incumbent upon every parent to listen to whatever noise they make, because they make a lot of noise, and eventually make a decision as a parent that is suitable for your child. You know, our children are also different. There are parents who have kids who have special conditions. There are parents who have kids who even have asthma and so on and so forth. So as a parent, your cardinal duty, other than listening to what these politicians are saying, is to make a decision that is best in the interest of your children. Secondly, remember, these are the same people who freed some ethanol that had been locked up somewhere
To make sanitizers.
to make sanitizers, which were supposed to have been given to us for free. I have never seen them. We have county governments like Kitui and I'm going to remember a few others that came up and showed us how they had come up with very nice textile industries, and they were sewing masks that we have never seen. So the national government is completely and totally guilty of promising masks that they have not given and sanitizers that they have not given. The county governments are also culprits, having learned from the national government that they can sew masks in factories that they took us videos of, showing us how prosperous they were, and those masks have never been seen. They have never seen the light of day, but we know that those masks have been made. Where they went to, where they are, we do not know. Remember, there was a time when government waived the condition that county governments needed to procure through KEMSA because this was seen as a disaster. And county government bought a lot of masks. Many of them, very many county governments bought lots of masks to go and distribute to their people. The only masks that we ever saw being given to people were the ones that had names of politicians on them. No politician wanted to give a mask that did not have their name. And if they found it impossible to brand, they never gave out. So we have a government at both levels that has failed. Because even politicians, I mean, I ask myself today, as you come to give somebody a wheelbarrow, how many masks can a wheelbarrow buy, for example?
Okay.
If you quantify, if a wheelbarrow is 5,000, divided by now a mask is 10 shillings, you can probably give 500 masks. So should we have been giving a wheelbarrow or a mask? A mkokoteni will probably buy 1,000 masks. Should we have been giving them mkokoteni or masks? So in my view, we have people in positions of leadership who do not mean well for Mwananchi, and that's why it's your duty as an individual to weigh the circumstances and make a decision that is fit for your family.
All right, Kidi, I want you to have the absolute final word on this school reopening issue. And we understand we have some private schools which are unable to get back to their feet after the COVID pandemic. And according to the Nation here, it says about 200 private institutions have been forced to shut down. What happens to the fate of these children? We understand some of these schools even had candidates. So what happens to them? Because nobody seems to be saying anything about them at all.
That is a pointer to a serious underlying fundamental problem. Because a lot of entrepreneurs, people who have been in business, courtesy of one, the punitive tax regime put in place and overseen by the Jubilee administration, and two, exacerbated by the pandemic, are now unable to continue being in business. So there is massive job loss, and there is a whole disaster that the ripple down effect is staggering. So that one, the owners of those, the proprietors of those schools are out of business. Two, the teachers whom they were paying have lost income. Three, the children do not have the places to go and learn, and now it means that their parents have to take alternative measures. So that this should prick the conscience of the government to make one necessary investment to make sure that our children do not have to go to seek for private schools. But then, because public policy and public administration seems to be bedeviled by this thinking of greed and reward of mediocrity, that will still persist. The other problem that I wanted to say about away from your question is that it seems we've placed so much emphasis on celebrity over substance. And so that every time Mheshimiwa Professor has come on telly to give us updates on the direction we think we should go, you see someone who is obsessed with being a celeb,
Celebrity status,
rather than giving us coherent, substantive policy interventions on how to ensure that we secure the future of our children. Thank you.
Let us now look at the KEMSA scandal. I want to come to Advice, because Advice says we are very mean with giving him time. So Advice, I'll start with you on this particular topic of the KEMSA and the scandal that is said to have bedeviled this medical supplies agency. And as late as yesterday, the PS, that is Susan Mochachi of Health, was in that particular parliamentary committee, and where she insists, hey, there was no money that was lost. What would you say about that before I now get deeper into that?
I think a precedent has already been set in this country, Kazungu, where we have always been treated to this drama, where we see a facade running, we are told money has gotten lost in a certain place. There is even an attempt to prove that actually money was lost. But now when we get down into the nitty-gritties and into the proving of these matters and into the handling of it by government, we have always been treated by these scenarios of then discovering that no money has been lost. And not just even in terms of corruption. We have had so many cases. There is a time when somebody was shot dead along some street, I think Moy Avenue something. And it was able, and everyone saw it. But then later we were told that the CCTV footage on that day was not functioning. So this is something that this country has kept treating its mwananchi to. And it is unfortunate, but normally when such a presence starts and when we start having such kind of talk, mostly we always end it up by saying, actually no one was found culpable, and it was a mere social media and media campaign drive that actually this thing actually never happened. And so it will be left more or less to the media again to maybe struggle to prove that there was actually money that was lost. But then when you go to court, you'll be told that the media is not an element of proof, and the Kidi is a lawyer, he'll help us there. So we have always been treated by this kind of drama in this country, where there has always been very good collusion between the perpetrators of crime, the investigating authorities, and then the legal jurisdiction. There has always been a well-crafted plot to always ensure that such crimes go unpunished, especially depending on who is the perpetrator of the crime.
But Advice, you're speaking about the common mwananchi and how they look at all this. But you and I will understand we have systematic challenges, we have policy issues. But the common mwananchi who does not understand all these games that are being played under the belly of this issue want justice, want to know if their money was eaten and if anybody will be punished for that.
Yes.
How, at the end of the day, are they supposed to read all this and digest all this and to understand that their money should not be misused, for lack of a better word?
Kazunga, that is why the Mwananchi today is finding it difficult to even believe in COVID. Because, you know, there was general fear and everybody really took proper plan to ensure that they were safe. When the government told us to sit indoors, people really tried to obey that, despite the fact that the economy was being hurt and people are not even able to feed their families. When we were told to wear masks, people really tried to really follow it up to very reasonable standards. But you realize that as soon as the KEMSA scandal came up, then the narrative of COVID being some what I would want to call maybe it is some conduit for money to be taken out of government. The trust of the common mwananchi in these issues started failing. And that's why today you can see Kazungu. The COVID, we are actually at almost 4 times more than what we were before in terms of the COVID infections and the COVID deaths. But go to the streets and you'll not see that effect on the common mwananchi. The people don't even care about those numbers because the mwananchi has already decided that this thing is not serious. Why? Because they have seen money get lost. They have seen promises that have not been delivered. They have been told they'll be given masks, they were not given. And so they feel this thing is not as serious as it actually looks. And that is why it really calls upon the legal aides, the legal experts of this country, the lawyers, the advocates of this country to help us, because I would dare say they are part of the problem of this country, because the people like Kidi, who should be representing the cases of this nature and persecuting them in court, will get to the court and complicate this matter and make it a very complex issue that the Mwananchi will not understand, and the Mwananchi will be told, you see, the court is not about hearsay, it's about proof.
Facts.
And of course, the Mwananchi has no facts about KEMSA, because how many of the Mwananchis work at KEMSA?
Okay.
And so this is something that unless the justice system of this country comes out and stands in authority to really help us get to the bottom of such matters, then we'll continue having this drama over and over again.
But speaking of facts, let me get to Ben first. And
Okay.
Speaking of facts, Ben, there are those who say that this whole KEMSA scandal is a scam. It came about because of some group of disgruntled individuals who missed out on tenders to supply stuff to KEMSA. Do you think that is the case?
To be pretty honest, we're in a very difficult country to live in. In fact, even the whole world watches us and wonders, how do these people behave and how do they live? Because initially it began as a scandal where 43 billion was in contention, or some huge figure of that amount. It's been reduced to some 2-point-something billion kind of scandal. Because the truth is, KEMSA had not even been allocated that 43 billion in the first place. And the expose that came out at first got Kenyans so sentimentalized, and they almost got mad to the point of, and then later it was realized that no, to be honest, yes, money could have been lost, but that amount of money had not been allocated to KEMSA in the first place. So it's like someone telling you that you have lost 100,000 and your salary is 20,000. So that in the first place raised a few questions. The facts remain very scanty, because unfortunately for us, the facts we get are the ones we hear from the media, which again sometimes, unfortunately, sometimes they televise what has been spilled, or depending on who pays their bills for which advertisement.
Our sources.
Yeah, from the sources. So, and actually, these people can also control what you air and what you do not air, and not the forceful way like in Magufuli land, but in other ways. So, the KEMSA scandal, for anybody to sit here and think that they have authority to speak about it and give us facts about it, they'll be probably lying. Because I can tell even the CEO is seeing some things now, and he's wondering, sasa hii imetoka wapi, imekuwa huko kwangu. So there's a lot that's going on that we cannot be able to say. But there's one thing I want you to allow me to backtrack on, and very quickly in 30 seconds. If the government wanted to buy a biro today, they buy it for 200 shillings. You and I buy it for 20 shillings. In terms of schools and infrastructure, the private schools that have lost and are feeling like they need to close down, they have actually been constructed at the actual cost. Because if government was to construct schools today, you would hear abnormal figures. My suggestion is that government should offer to buy those schools from those who are willing to sell to government, and we change them and we call them government schools, because we shall buy them at market rate. But if government begins to build a class now, you will hear one block, one stone, one brick is about 3,000 shillings. And so if you ask me, I think that's a good way. The government could actually offer to buy those schools at market rate from those who are willing to sell their schools. We repaint them and call them county government of wherever, and they become government schools. Because, I mean, I don't think education should be something we should be selling to people.
All right, Kidi, you had something to say.
Yeah, my brother said something very fundamental, that public procurement in this country has turned into millionaires minting scheme. So that any time the government wants to procure anything, then it is an opportunity for a few folks, especially those who are politically correct, to become instant millionaires and billionaires to the detriment of everybody else. And that should not be let to exacerbate. The other thing is that my brother said something about the law profession. I will not let that go unchallenged. That if our institutions were working, they would not have had to say those not so pleasant things he's saying about the law profession. Because one thing, a lawyer who has been instructed to act for a client will, of course, do so within the confines of the law. And therefore, if and when there is shortcomings and failures, I think he should hold his government accountable, not the law profession. Thank you.
But let me ask you this one
Yes,
question
please.
before I take it round to the panel. And this whole issue surrounding the KEMSA scandal at some point attracted the attention of the president. He gave directives. We saw the EACC and the DCI making arrests and summoning and questioning people. He actually even gave a deadline. Then all of a sudden, psh, it went down and silent. So will we ever come to the bottom of this scandal at KEMSA, if at all there was one, so that Kenyans can really understand and feel that the government is working?
Well, one thing, my brother Kazungu, is that there is a reason why the framers of the Constitution of Kenya 2010, in their infinite wisdom, decided to do away deliberately with what was called roadside declarations,
Okay.
or what you call rule by fiat.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, the president holding a press conference and breathing fire and giving directives and whatnot are what I would call, for lack of a better word, PR exercise. Because I'm really, of course, trying to be very respectful to the institution of the presidency. But it is a PR exercise because when you talk about, when, for instance, people have been named, people who are close to the house in the hill, and then the investigative agencies have not come out 2-3 months down the line to tell us that we have acting suo motu, acting on our own motion, we went to KEMSA and did a thorough investigation that in the past 60 days or 30 days, this is what our investigations has revealed. And contrary to what the media was saying, this is the true position of the state of affairs. When you look at when the parliamentary agencies invite the quote-unquote the suspects to appear before them, it is actually entertaining rather than informing. So that it is, we are treated to drama and drama and drama, and who is trying to come up with slogans and buzzwords and whatnot. But then, so that at the end of the day, it sheds more heat than light.
Okay. Okay, Ben.
When our institutions begins to work, we shall run away from these circles that we are seeing.
Ben, we're talking about public money here. And the people, of course, all of them cannot go to parliament to, of course, that's why we have MPs. And in parliament, we have committees. And these committees have powers to investigate and to look at how public officers conduct themselves, especially in this topic here is about how the use of public funds. But let us look at parliamentary committees and their track record in coming up with unearthing ills in our society today. And that doesn't look so good, right? Whenever you ask MPs, they will tell you, the story they will tell you is about the parliamentary committee that came to prosecute Waluke. But nothing else seems to be coming out of parliamentary committees except, of course, monies and retreats and all that theatrics we saw there. What really happens with these parliamentary committees and these investigations they do?
First and foremost, it is possible to use 10,000 in a toilet to buy a member of parliament. That has been proven. Is there anything else you want to discuss about such a member of parliament?
Not really.
Because the bulk of the time, it's about who pays how much, and they get what they want.
Okay.
And it goes back to us as voters. Whom do we vote for, and why do we vote for them? Because the day we will start looking inwardly and looking at our village and saying in our village, tumeangalia tumeona mtu fulani is worthy of leadership. And we front that person because they are worthy of leadership. And we stand behind them and we vote for them. This country will change. But for as long as we look for the goon who dishes out the highest amount of money and who worships other bigger political gods and who insults the people that we think are our enemies, because we've had that thing of like 2017. The people in central Kenya appeared like they were fighting the people of Nyanza, and the reverse. Today they are in bed together. Now, any MP who stood and insulted Raila very hard in Central Province got a vote. And people in Luo Nyanza who really insulted Uhuru got very many votes.
Even went naked.
Yeah, and now the two are together. So sometimes we vote for people based on how hard they fight the people we think are our enemies. But if we start looking around us, like how did we make Sonko governor surely? You know, if we start looking around us and saying we are going to vote leaders based on merit, and we will only give the best, this country will move forward.
Advice. I really wanted you to give us advice on this whole matter, but I'm being told we have to take a break. But when we come back, we'll be looking at the BBI, the 4 or 5 million signatures within a week. Is it practical? Are they going to hack that? You want to stay around for that as we pay some bills first, and then we come back.
We just draw a goat. Cow.
Or an elephant. All right, welcome back, and thank you for staying with us. Let us now go to the third segment of our show this 18th of November. And I want to begin with advice. And the proponents of the BBI say they are on a roll. They want to collect about between 4 and 5 million signatures in a week. Do you think that's practical or even possible?
I think before I look at the practicability and the possibility of it, I want to come from an understanding that the BBI, as it stands now, is a government process. And the body that is mandated to verify the signatures is another government institution. I therefore want to really doubt whether a government process will not be successful through a government institution. But that having said and done, I want to think the quote is rather quite ambitious, but I want to believe that the possibility is there because it's a government process. There are some things that are not going to be considered, like the COVID-19 protocols, because for you to put people together to collect those signatures, those numbers of signatures, in a situation where, again, we are supposed to be social distancing, if it were not being spearheaded by a government, I would tell you outrightly that is not going to be possible, because then people will not be allowed to gather to do any signing of any signatures. But because it is a government process, and we have run a state of affairs whereby it looks like COVID is also very particular, when it sees a government process, like it goes onto a halt. And then when it's someone who is not in government, then that is the time then we want to be very cautious about the COVID-19. So I think the process will go on. It will be supported by all government agencies, including security agencies. And this is a pact that is there between a president of a country and the most populous person in the republic. So when we have the president and Raila Odinga spearheading a process, then there is very little room that process will not go through.
All right, Ben, we're talking about 5 million signatures in about a week. That's about 700,000 signatures in a day. Given the whole scenario surrounding COVID, given the whole scenario about parents having that hard time of planning to take their kids back to school, is it necessary we do this thing now, Ben?
I'll start by saying that on the 8th of August, 14 million Kenyans queued, voted, and they were voting 6 pieces. So 6 ballots times 14 million Kenyans. More than 80 million ballot papers were marked in one day. What I'm trying to tell you is that if these people want 5 million signatures in 3 hours, they'll get 5 million signatures. Because if you think about it, 14 million of us queued, 6 in the morning, by 6 in the evening, each had filled in 6 papers. Yeah, because from MCA to president,
6 piece.
And 14 million people. On the president's birthday, 8 million people queued. 8 million people queued, and each gave 6. No, it was for the president only.
Yeah.
But 8 million people were able to vote. So when you serve 3, 4, 5 million votes in a week, it's even a very slow process for them. But what I'm trying to say is this. Is it necessary right now? To be honest, it's not. To be honest, right now, we need masks, we need sanitizers, we need food on the table, we need an economy, we need money in our pockets, and we need a stable life. But unfortunately, they have learned one thing, that the poor in this country are very many. And let me tell you, if you have 3 meals a day, you're part of the 25% of Kenyans who are said to be living on more than $1 a day. The bulk of them, and the government knows, and the politicians know, the bulk of them, if William Ruto comes with 300 shillings to give each, they'll fill a stadium in Muranga. And the following day, Raila will come, and the same people will fill the same stadium, and they will sing Raila's song. And the following day, if Ekuru Okot comes and he has money, the same people will fill the same stadium. What I'm trying to say is right now, Kenyans are on sale. And anybody, because kama sasa ukisikia signature ni 100, kusign tu ni 100, kwenda kwa MCA ni 100, utatoka. I'm telling you guys will even sign 3 times for each signature 100 shillings. It is easier than taking a slasher and doing kazi kwa vijana mtaani. So these guys will get more signatures than they need. But to be honest, what we need right now as a nation is food, we need masks, we need clothing for the people. We need to have a humane face to the problems that are facing us. But watapata tu, unfortunately.
There are those who argue that, fine, we can sit down and agree to change the constitution by popular initiative, by way of referendum. But there are those who say, it is okay, but we can wait a little bit longer and maybe put this referendum question within the general election, like what the US did in the previous election here. If somebody were to tell you that, what would you tell them?
What the US did?
The US have, besides the elective positions, they also are voting for referendum, for example, for the legalization of marijuana in some states, for example, for the minimum wage bill in some states. They were referenda that were actually intertwined within the general election. Others are saying in Kenya we should also try and do that.
One of the biggest problems with our politics is a desire to want to imitate everything and anything without looking at local dynamics and if it suits our local dynamics. For instance, one of the problems of the Constitution in Kenya 2010 was the copying and pasting of provisions from other jurisdictions and imagining that they would work in this our situation without taking time to figure out if it would really work for us. For instance, you know, we have if you look at all advanced democracies, they are all parliamentary democracies, save for US. But then one thing about the US is that they have devolved power to the states. So that the federal government has got this limited power, especially on resource allocation. When we came here, we said we wanted a pure presidential system. After 2 elections and 8 years later, we've seen how corrosive pure presidential system is. And that is one of those questions that will be put to the referendum. Saying that we will delay this process up to 2022 is a counter-reform narrative.
How so?
Run by people, I will demonstrate, run by people who are from the get-go opposed to this process and are now taking advantage of COVID, conveniently taking advantage of COVID to say that let us stall the process and reach in 2022. Jeremiah Kioni was on record saying that let us not have the referendum, let us put it together with the 2022 general elections so that as you go to the polls, you also make that. Yes. That would be a distraction because part of the problems BBI has sought to cure is to cure it so that when you go to 2022, we do not go back to the same problems we've had before. There is the argument about the economics of the referendum in regards to the state of our economy, in regards to the pandemic and whatnot. I would say that one, we must appreciate that BBI is a process that brings state actors and non-state actors. That those in government are maybe pushing for it, but there is the other half of people who may not be in government who are pushing for it. So that when it comes to the economy, let us hold the government accountable. But because the BBI process is a coalition of, entities that are broader than the government in isolation or those in government, I think the process must continue as we hold the government accountable in doing for us the things we cannot do for ourselves, and which is the reason why we put governments in office.
All right, very well said. Advice.
Yeah.
Governors have issues with the recommendations in the BBI. MCAs have given their own irreducible minimums. The clergy, on the other hand, say the recommendations as they are not for the best interest of the common mwananchi. Let us look at the governors and the MCAs, and we understand the MCAs are one of the most important piece of the puzzle in this whole referendum push. Do you think the proponents of the BBI have a chance if MCAs, for whatever reason, choose not to support it?
Kazungu, in as much as I agree that there are aspects of the BBI that would need a bit of change here or there and a bit of improvement here and there, I also am alive to the fact that we have people who are now misusing that open chance to now drive political agenda. Because I would want to imagine that before the MCAs tell us what they want in the BBI, they should first of all tell us what they recommended during the process. Because we have had a 2-year process, a total of 94 stakeholder engagement meetings that have been done by the BBI. We have had a total of 526, if I'm not wrong, memoranda presented to the BBI task force. Now, the MCAs and every other person who is claiming they have something to add on or to subtract from the BBI should first of all tell us that this is what we proposed, but this was not factored. Or this is what we proposed, and we think it was not put in the manner that we said it. But in a situation where we all wait until the document is out, then suddenly all of us have a lot of wisdom, and we all now want to know what we want to put in there. I think that is blackmail to the task force, and that is pure politics. It is just politics of trying to be part of a process so that you can also claim some relevance, but it is not an honest feel that that's exactly what you want to do. Because the question is, Kazungu, where have you been? It's been 2 years of this process. It's been a whole whooping 2 years. We've had the first release of the document, which came out, and some quarters agreed with it 100%. And Azungu, you look at the document that they agreed with 100%, it still didn't have what they are proposing today.
Yes.
So you ask yourself, what is this they were agreeing with 100%?
Nothing.
And when we come now here, and after they agreed 100%, there was another process that took some months, I think up to almost a year, to now say, let us now look at what has been recommended. What do you think can be added? There was time again. The BBI task force was again re-gazetted. These people did not present anything at all. Now, today, after we have had an official unveiling of this, then suddenly people have a lot of wisdom and people have a lot of ideas and they have these pregnant things that they think can change this country. That is blackmail and that is politics.
Okay. You want to respond and then I'll ask you a question.
There's something we need to agree on today. Someone comes and opens their mouths wide and says, this thing does not capture the aspirations of Mwananchi. This person is an MCA. So you ask him, what are the aspirations of Mwananchi? And they say the aspirations of Mwananchi is that if I cease to become an MCA, I'll be getting a pension permanently. That's what I want added in BBI.
Okay.
Someone is a governor. The governor says this does not capture the aspirations of Mwananchi. So you listen and expect now they're going to say something about Wanchiko. And the next thing they say that they want immunity for governors from prosecution for the crimes that they commit when they steal money from us. So, and when you listen, I wish there was someone, even the church, who came up with something substantive, a proposal that we feel to be honest. This one captures the will, the spirit, and the desire of the people. But anybody who has objected to the continuation of the BBI process has brought in something that is completely and totally selfish and that does not capture the interest of any Mwananchi. Secondly, how many of our MCAs are past Form 4 education?
Yes.
And how many of them have been able to read this 204-page document
And understood it.
You know, someone comes and takes an office of and says one, then he says his name. He doesn't even know that this is I, so it's one, then he says his name. And I have those clips and we used to laugh. And that is the person who is supposed to pass a 200-page document and that's the person who is supposed to debate at the county assembly. And that's why they have a problem with BBI, because it requires that they be graduates moving forward.
But then, Ben, these people, the MCAs are powerful. They hold the power to the next process of this particular process.
I don't think that
don't
position
think so.
is true.
That is not true.
I don't
How
think
so,
it is.
guys?
That is not true.
Okay, let me explain. You can't say that the MCAs are powerful because there is a reason why Article 1.1 of the Constitution says that the sovereign power belongs to the people.
The people, yeah?
Yes. A conglomeration of folks who had privilege of being elected into the county assemblies cannot hold us at ransom, especially when we want to build and rebuild our political institutions to carry us for the next 50 years. The BBA process, one thing that a lot of people are not paying attention to, is that the BBA process was an attempt to remove us from a nation of blood ties into a nation of ideals.
I understand that, Kidi,
Yes.
but for this process to go to the next step, they
Yes.
need the support of 24 counties.
Yes.
What if they don't get that?
It's easy. You see, parties have got powers to whip and de-whip their members.
Brilliant.
If I was Raphael Tuju and I'm sitting in Jubilee, I would tell Jubilee MCAs, this is our position as a party. Anyone who feels that they do not want to support the party position, please raise up your hand so that we can remove our sponsorship from you and give it to someone who will support the party position. And given that the bulk of them know that if they go back to Mwananchi, they are not coming back. I mean, we don't mind having 100 by-elections. We don't mind.
And
as
thereby,
long as we do what needs to be done for this country, and the basic minimum is to ensure that our MCAs moving forward hold at least, watch hata your degree, at least a diploma, at least, hata kama ni electrical engineering, hata kama ni ya kutengeneza baskeli, because that helps them to be at a level where at least they understand what they are doing.
And then advice then, if you bring the angle of political parties and their powers
Before you go to my brother advice, let me say this, that we do not want the BBI process to be passed in an environment of arrogance and braggadocio. But then, people who are opposing the BBI process...
Next time you tell us to carry dictionaries here. Braggadocio. Aya, we'll carry.
are not being decent. Are not being decent because, one, they're not coming to this conversation with humility. So that you hear first, they talk about preconditions and ultimatums and whatnot. And that takes us back to a situation we were in 2015. When I remember the opposition and the government, I mean the opposition was calling for national dialogue. But then it was called in an environment of antagonism. If these folks think that there is a problem that needs to be cured before we move forward, I wish they were able to come calmly and respectfully and engage constructively with other stakeholders so that we move forward. But you see, when you come with ultimatums, you are likely to also inflame our passions also, because the people who are supporting referendum are also human beings. They are also Kenyans with the same rights as you do, so they would want to bulldoze their way.
Okay.
So I wish that to de-escalate tensions in this process, let every party engage the other party respectfully. Thank you.
Then advice, I was saying, if we now introduce the angle of political parties and the powers to whip and whip members into line, then at that particular instance, the interest of the common Mwananchi dissolves, and it's now about political. It's not about people using it as a political vehicle to either flex their muscle or to see where they stand politically. The common Mwananchi, where does he stand in this BBI process?
I think, Kazungu, it is not right to tend to imagine that when this matter is left to, when political parties whip their people, then the interest of the Mwananchi is not taken care of. Because these political parties are sponsored by the Mwananchi. These political parties are the ones which are giving out their manifestos out there and providing a human being in the name of Kidi Mwaga and saying, this person, we present him as ODM to you, the people of Homa Bay.
I belong to Kanu, so you should have used
Would
Kanu.
you, the people of Homa Bay, elect Kidi Mwaga, whom we as Kanu have presented into the National Assembly to represent your interests, which will be will be key to the interests of Kanu as well? Then the people of Homa Bay say yes. So political parties as well represent the people. And it is not right for us. There is always this narrative that when it's political party interests, then it is not people interests. No.
Yeah.
Those two things are intertwined. And the Mwananchi should understand that. And that's why they should therefore vote for people and parties.
All right.
So they're able to know that the parties hold a very good say.
And
And
the same-
just before Ben delves in, because I think I gave them a whole hour to talk about Kidi. There is also the aspect of the MCAs being thought to hold an individual opinion. Those of us in politics will tell you that there is something in politics called claim for relevance. Most of what these people are just doing is they're just claiming for relevance. They don't believe in what they're even saying. They just want to be seen to say it because there is someone listening to them. They want to be part of the process. You will remember that there was someone called Ekuru Ekot who came up with something called Punguza Mzigo. I think it was the most popular thing in this country. But when it went down to the assemblies,
It died there.
I doubt it even got one county
It
assembly.
only got one, was in Gishu.
Well, yes. So it shows you that there is what the MCAs will shout out here for relevance, for the cameras, to be able to look like they are talking. Because again, you know, politics is about perception.
For political
It's just
posturing.
political posturing,
Brilliant.
political mileage. But then when it comes down to the reality, I can assure you, if the members of parliament who went to school can be whipped, if the members of the Senate who went to school, and we have so many doctors and professors in that house, can be whipped, who are MCAs? They will be whipped by not even the party leaders. They will be whipped by the chairmen of the parties in the county.
The leaders of majorities.
Actually, it's very simple. Look at it this way. This is a person who, in Central Province, in his campaign poster had to put the photo of Uhuru for him to be elected. And in Nyanza had to put the photo of Raila. In fact, it was bigger than his in his campaign poster for him to become an MCA. That's the person who is telling Uhuru and Raila that I will not pass your BBI
Until I get a car grant.
until I get a car grant. And he's being told, wait a minute, I can show you an image of your campaign poster. That you had put an image of me as Raila or me as Uhuru bigger than yours for you to get, because they depended on these people to be who they are. And even right now, they depend on them. So I think it is good to be fair that if you are in a party, you have to follow the position of your party.
Brilliant.
And you have to continue in that direction. And if you feel you're big enough, you've grown, there's the option of resigning,
Then you go back
vying
to
as
seek the mandate.
independent.
Exactly.
And then when you come back now, you're an independent person.
You
and
can
you
make
can
your
be able
own
to make
decision.
your own independent decisions. And my experience is that the Catholic Church, the PC, and the Anglican has got more people than the independent churches.
Yes, yes,
William Ruto.
yes.
He has said that if the window for more proposals will not be reopened, then he feels like he's going to lead
Yes.
the no camp. Should Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga be worried about William Ruto?
I want to answer that question, give it a two-pronged approach. One, I want to answer it from a legal standpoint. Then I will respond to it from a political standpoint. From a legal standpoint, we must agree that a constitution-making and constitution review is a legal process. As a legal process, it goes back to Article 101, that the sovereign power belongs to the people.
The people.
And therefore, when the people have got reservations, it is only proper and just that they are heard. And that ends there. The other question is that have the people been heard? And I will tell you yes. Where? We had BBI 1 and BBI 2.
Okay.
And in this BBI 1 and BBI 2, William Ruto was not engaging the BBI process constructively. If anything, what he was doing and what I would call his attack dogs were doing were to bastardize and demonize the process day after day after day, including when we were doing consultative forums. I remember them coming to Meru. I remember them coming to Mombasa, because I was in Mombasa. I remember them coming to Kitui and Mamangilu shouting, Watoe, right? They were instead of coming with proposals and saying that, folks, you're making proposals, these are proposals. They did not do that politically. Is that should Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta be afraid? They should not. Because they have the constituency that would pass these proposals with an over 70% approval rating. William Ruto has mastered the art of blackmail,
Deceit.
the art of deceit, and what I would call subterfuge. William Ruto has consistently responded to questions we've never asked him. For instance, we've raised proprietary questions to William Ruto that he stole Kimorera Ndaror.
Allegedly.
Yes, we put it to him politically. We said to him that, gentlemen, it is said that you are responsible for the Kiamba Church fiasco. He has not responded to that. We've told him that his Western Hotel is standing on illegal land. He has never responded to it. What William Ruto says is he responds to the questions that we've never asked him. Mimi sio mlevi. We've never said he's a drunkard. Mimi sio mjinga. We've never said William Ruto is mjinga. Mimi ndio naibu wa rais wa Jamhuri ya Kenya. We've never said that he's not the deputy president. All these questions are meant to wink and lead us down the wrong path. He is deliberately misleading us. BBI process is, among other things, seeking to have an environment where allegations of corruptions are investigated and prosecuted within a record time. And that is one of the things that William Ruto is scared about. So as a result, he has chosen the path of bastardizing this process. Politically, we are prepared for William Ruto and all those who are opposed to this process. Thank you.
Ben, I know you're itching to respond to what Kidi said, but there's been this school of thought who say this whole BBI process is actually a conflicted one, because in as much as they want to go to the referendum because some of the issues they want to amend are in Article 255, others are saying this is a process that is a political process because it's being championed by President Uhuru Kenyatta and the ODM leader Raila Odinga, in as much as they want to come and amend the issues affecting the common community down at the grassroots level. What would you subscribe to the same school of thought?
Number one, the good book called the Bible says you know them by their fruits.
Yes.
There was a time...
And I'm being told that this will also come as your parting shots because we are really...
Okay, perfect. There was a time when Raila Amolo Odinga was disgruntled after the elections of 2017. He was not happy with the results and everything. The nation came to a standstill. It got to a point where we could not travel to certain parts of country and other people from other parts of the country could not travel to certain... We were two nations in one. It tells you that if Raila is unhappy and his following is unhappy, this nation could come to a standstill. And if Uhuru is unhappy and his following is unhappy, this nation could come to a standstill. Those are the fruits. We have a guy called William Samoei Ruto who is completely and totally unhappy. But we are selling mangoes, we are buying fruits, we are riding mkokotenis, we are going to every other part of this country. His people are shouting from all sides of the mouth, louder than I ever heard Raila shout when he was disgruntled. But this nation is moving on so smoothly to the point that nobody remembers that Ruto is unhappy. And whoever told him to be unhappy, because when they were campaigning, they said that whenever they win this election, and we can go these clips, they are going to try and bring Kenya together. They will unite this nation. And they went to a prayer breakfast where I saw people, and this is where representation of the people sometimes draws a line. The way I saw some of those MPs eating, they were not representing me. They ate too much at that prayer breakfast, and we were hungry. And they were saying they are going to unite us. Now, that uniting us, what is wrong with Raila, Uhuru, and even Ruto shaking hands and coming together if it was not for the fact that Ruto selfishly wants to be president and he does not imagine a situation where anybody else can become? I think I end it there.
I want you to give us the advice on the state of the nation because I'm told we really need to go right now. So give us an advice on how we need to move together as a nation now in 20 seconds.
I will first of all say that despite everything that is happening in the country, we as Kenyans need to be hopeful. We need to be visionary, and we need to lose hope. We need to keep the hope alive. And about the BBI, I would wish to tell Kenyans that look at this keenly without necessarily the influence of external forces and the interests of people whose interest is to destroy the process for their own selfish gain. Let us look at it objectively and make very informed decisions. When it comes to the matter of COVID, I would wish to request the government that kindly let us be able to be, for once, deliberate and serious about the issue. Deliberate and serious in a manner that will help this country move it forward. And then maybe to add by the list, I would wish to add that the students of Kabarak University are having their elections today, where they are choosing their student council, and my sister is vying for president. So I'd wish all of you to wish.
All right, gentlemen, I'm being told that it is no longer a new day here, so we have to get out of this set, of course, for other programming to come on board. But thank you so much, Kenya, for choosing us to inform you over these 2 hours. We've had a very insightful conversation surrounding the state of the nation, where we have been, where we are, and where we need to get from here. Every News 1 p.m. coming right up. See you soon. Thank you very much. God bless you.